Happy New Year and welcome back to LAWSTACHE channel. If you're a returning viewer, you already know that every Wednesday I publish a video discussing usually a criminal case on the First, Second, Third, Fourth, Fifth, Sixth, and Eighth Amendments. Well, that was a mouthful. But if there's a focus, it is usually the Fourth Amendment, the one that protects you against unreasonable searches and seizures. I will tell you that 2024 has been a huge success for me. I saw the biggest spike in viewership, and so thank you so much for all of you who are returning every week, every Wednesday, and joining me in the discussion of the law. I really appreciate it. This is going to be my last video of 2024 and the first one of 2025. It should come out on Wednesday, January 1st. And what we're going to do today is discuss 3 of the top videos that I had this year. And this is solely based on viewership. The first video gained over 100,000 views, and it dealt with an individual refusing police to enter her home without a warrant to arrest a felon, and later being charged as an accessory after the fact. Now, the second top video deals with a Ruse checkpoint. This year, I've discussed many checkpoint cases. We're talking about DUI checkpoints, administrative checkpoints, agriculture checkpoints, and finally, drug checkpoints. When the Supreme Court deemed drug checkpoints illegal, many police departments began to execute sort of a Ruse checkpoints, where they would put up the signs saying checkpoint ahead, and really there wouldn't be one. Instead, they would watch people who would take the next exit off the freeway and then pull those people over. Well, that is the second case. And finally, the third top video deals with single-purpose containers exception, meaning when we're looking at the container, it is incriminating or illegal from the outside. This is really a variation of the plain view doctrine. Now, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to clip some of the most important sections out of those videos so you have an idea about these topics. But if you're interested in watching the whole thing, I will link it in the description below. Thank you so much again for joining me in 2024. I hope you continue watching me in the next year. And thank all of you who have been supporting my channel by purchasing my merchandise on LAWSTACHE.com, including the famous Do Not Arrest This Person t-shirts. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next year.
Quick message from LAWSTACHE. Are you charged with a crime? Or do you want to know your rights if stopped by police? Watch California attorney Anton Vialtsin discuss legal cases from the Supreme Court, Ninth Circuit, and California state courts on the LAWSTACHE YouTube page. Anton has handled hundreds of federal and state criminal cases, has an in-depth knowledge of the law, and has the best mustache ever. Subscribe to the LAWSTACHE YouTube page. That's LAWSTACHE.
United States versus Prescott is my top video of 2024. It came out in March and so far has gained over 100,000 views. It deals with a situation where an individual refuses entry to the police for them to arrest an individual they believe committed a felony. Now, the court at the end holds that absent exigent circumstances, officers must obtain a warrant to enter a dwelling and execute an arrest of an individual they believe committed a felony. But let's go ahead and take a look at the clip from the video that discusses this case a little bit in more detail. And if you're interested in watching the whole thing, I will link it in the description below. So let's go ahead. The officers suspected that Mr. Davarney was inside. They asked Miss Prescott if they could enter the apartment. She did not allow them to do so. They left the apartment, walked around, tried searching for Mr. Davarney in the area, couldn't find him, came back to Miss Prescott's apartment again, talked to the husband, trying to get consent from him to enter. At some point, Miss Prescott simply asked the officers if they had a warrant to enter. They say they didn't. And so again, she did not let them in. The officers then called the U.S. Attorney's Office for guidance. They then came back and told Ms. Prescott that she had 3 seconds to open the door, and if she refused, they would forcibly enter, which they did. Inside the apartment, they found, of course, Mr. Dravarny, as well as some of the packages. He was arrested, but so was Ms. Prescott. She was arrested for being an accessory after the fact and for her refusal to let the officers enter the apartment. Now remember, the Fourth Amendment protects you against unreasonable searches and seizures, and generally speaking, officers need to have a warrant in order to conduct a search or seizure. Here, of course, we're talking about a seizure of a person, an arrest warrant. They didn't have one. So could the officers enter the apartment in order to execute an arrest of a felon? The Supreme Court has long held that police need no warrant to arrest a felony suspect on probable cause in a public place. But of course, in this case, we're not dealing with a public place. We're dealing with a private dwelling. In Coolidge, the court stated in dicta that the notion that the warrantless entry of a man's house in order to arrest him on probable cause is per se legitimate is in fundamental conflict with the basic principle of Fourth Amendment law, that searches and seizures inside a man's house without warrant are per se unreasonable in the absence of some one of the number of well-defined exigent circumstances. And of course, we have long held that every man's house is his castle. It is thus not surprising that the court has long recognized that physical entry of the home is the chief evil against which the wording of the Fourth Amendment is directed, and has traditionally afforded the most stringent Fourth Amendment protection to the sanctity of the private dwelling. In second place, with 70,000 views, is United States versus Neff, and it deals with Ruse drug checkpoints. So let's take a look at this clip. First, let me tell you, as a general matter, officers can stop and briefly detain an individual if they have reasonable suspicion that criminal activity is afoot. These are also known as Terry stops. So that is the reason when officers see a traffic infraction being committed in front of them, such as speeding, they can pull over a vehicle and conduct their investigation and perhaps give the ticket. Now, what about administrative searches, such as when the officers put checkpoints on the road? Well, the Supreme Court has previously held that roadside narcotics checkpoints are unconstitutional and violate the Fourth Amendment. So after this decision, many police departments began to modify how they conduct their checkpoints. And so in United States versus Yusuf, the Eighth Circuit has held that it was also unconstitutional for officers to put out signs on the freeway saying that there's a narcotics checkpoint ahead and then wait for the individuals to take the first exit, and there, at that exit, was in fact the checkpoint. Rather than putting the checkpoint on the highway, they put one at the end of the ramp, saying that now the individuals were trying to avoid the checkpoint and they were being caught. Well, the Eighth Circuit says that this was also unconstitutional. The Eighth Circuit said there was other reasons why motorists could have taken that exit. Number one, it might have been their route all along. Of course, some individuals might have tried to avoid the checkpoint, while others might have tried to avoid the checkpoint for legitimate reasons. For example, they might have thought that this would slow down their traveling time, and said they would take the exit to make their journey a little bit quicker, which is completely reasonable and understandable and legal under the Fourth Amendment. But here, of course, we're dealing rather with an interesting situation. There was no checkpoint at all. Well, the court says that they agree with the Eighth Circuit, and even though there's no checkpoint, even if there was, this would be unconstitutional and would violate the Fourth Amendment. And in third place is United States versus Gust, a video that gained 67,000 views. And it deals with a single purpose container. So let's take a look at this clip. we're dealing with officers arriving on the property and finding these containers, namely the firearm cases. So Sanders still applies, and it defines what's called a single-purpose container exception. And the court in Sanders explained it in this way. Not all containers and packages found by the police during the course of a search will deserve the full protection of the Fourth Amendment. Thus, some containers, for example, a kit of burglary tools or a gun case, by their very nature cannot support any reasonable expectation of privacy, because their contents can be inferred from their outward appearance. This is nothing more than a variant on a plain view doctrine. Remember the plain view doctrine? It tells us that the officers can see incriminating evidence as long as they're standing at a lawful vantage point, and if that evidence is incriminating, this is not a search. Well, this video wraps up 2024. These were the 3 top videos for me. Again, thanks a lot for joining me every Wednesday to discuss a criminal case and supporting my channel. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and maybe review some of these videos in full. If you're interested in purchasing one of these noisy windbreakers, go to LAWSTACHE.com. There you'll also find the famous "Do Not Arrest This Person" t-shirt, which is also available on the same website, LAWSTACHE.com. Thanks again for a successful 2024. Thank you to all of my clients. You have been fantastic. And of course, if you're new here, hit that subscribe button. I'll see you next Wednesday, and happy 2025.